Hi, everybody. Welcome to the White Hatter YouTube News Show. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Darren.
We've got a couple interesting headlines to talk about here today.
Just finished another virtual presentation. That's why I'm dressed up.
You did?
You got one this afternoon, right?
Yes.
Hey, did you know in the next 8 weeks, I counted, we got 60 presentations, boy.
60?
60. Oh!
We
got one in we got a school in New Jersey. A whole school district's connected with us in New Jersey. Pretty cool, eh?
All right.
I mean, that's what I love about what you've done with this. I mean, we're getting far more reach than we did when we were doing face-to-face.
Like I keep saying, I'm
fact,
really liking virtual
and
over
in fact,
in person.
We're doing more presentations now with virtual than we ever did face-to-face as well. Like,
really
it'll be interesting to see what happens post-COVID. I think that we're at least a year and a half to 2 years out. That's what I'm thinking. It'll be interesting to see what happens, to see, you know, will there still be some schools that want us in person? Yes. Will there be some periods? It'll be very interesting. But I agree with you. This virtual thing is pretty cool. Yeah. I love how you design and we're doing, anyways, it's just cool. Yeah. Just cool.
Let's talk about some news.
In the news.
First on the news for today is Cyberpunk 2077 is back in the news again.
Isn't that the game that you were holding out to play and now you played it and that kind of stuff?
I played it. Yeah. It's definitely nowhere near what they promised, and it's definitely a lot of problems. Overall, I enjoyed it, but there was a lot of problems with it.
Okay, how many stars out of 10?
How many stars out of 10?
How many stars? How many white hats out of 10?
Out of 10, I would give it a 7.5.
7.5 white hats?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Why not a full 10? What didn't you like about it?
Are we a game review show now?
Why not? What didn't you like about it?
Expectations weren't met. Buggy. The choices they're saying it was all about a lot of choices, but it was all very linear. Okay. In terms of the graphics, the world immersion, it was really good, but it was definitely lacking, and it needed more, at least a year.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched your partner Candace playing it on Twitch.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
she has no idea what covering concealment means.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what's going on with it?
All right. So, a security researcher basically discovered that there was a particular flaw in the code which could be exploited via installing mods. Now,
okay, what's a mod?
So a mod is essentially when there's a game, more PC games specifically, because they're capable of doing that.
Right.
You download an addition or something that modifies, that changes your game.
Right.
That's made by someone else, which therein lies the issue. Now we've seen in the past, hackers using mods as a way to get viruses into someone's computer because they go, I'm going to download this mod that allows me to do this in the game.
Is a mod a person or is it a program?
It's a program. It's a modification. A mod, right?
But mods can also be people
much
too,
like
right?
your glasses are mods, right? You're modifying your body, right?
Well, I know that when you guys are on Twitch doing some of the things you guys do on Twitch and Discord, you have mods there.
Yeah, mods are moderators, right?
Okay, so it
depends
has,
on the context.
It has two meanings.
It depends on the context.
That's where I was going with this, because I'm thinking, okay, but when I watch you guys on Twitch and Discord, you have these mods, and mods are people on those. So.
No,
okay.
Mods have different. The short-term mod can be different things depending on the context.
Okay, for this context, it's software.
Moderations, yeah, it's a modification to the game software. Right. Much like you have glasses, which modifies your sight.
So these are mods.
People argue, are you a cyborg or not? Which is a whole interesting psychological, philosophical thing.
All right. That's pretty deep.
I know, right?
I hope Cal's following the deepness of this. I just got his word. It's got his name in again, right? Anyway, so what's going on?
Basically, be careful when downloading mods, and this applies to any game. But particularly, there was a code in Cyberpunk that could allow that. Now, there was no evidence of it being exploited per se, but given that there's a possibility.
So was this one of the cases where a security company found it, notified the makers of Cyberpunk, hey, listen, this is a vulnerability, fix it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Cyberpunk has a lot of bugs it has to fix anyway, so it's basically just be cautious of what you download. If you are downloading mods can be great. I download mods for certain games, but that's why I have certain security procedures and software in place that if I do download something that may not be that great, it will block and remove it.
I remember you were looking so forward to this game. You actually told us, listen, I'm going underground for 7 days.
I did.
Right?
I did binge it. Yes, I did.
Okay. But it just didn't meet your expectations.
It's a type of game that I enjoy, and there wasn't inherently nothing wrong about it.
What are you playing now that you're enjoying?
Right now, I'm not playing anything AAA. I'm playing Magic the Gathering Arena, which you can play, a couple minutes here and there.
Are you like a warlock or something? You just
no,
cast spells,
it's like Magic the Gathering playing cards. It's like the playing card set, but it's virtual and it's free to play. But you can pay to get extra packs.
Like loot boxes?
Basically, it's like loot boxes.
Okay, gotcha.
But you don't have to pay, and you can earn coins that get you the card packs if you just grind to play the game.
Okay.
And actually,
So it's not as if you have to put real money down in order to get the virtual money.
you don't have to.
Gotcha.
You can if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and you put down maybe you play for 4 months, you put down $20. It's like it's actually not that bad.
So the moral of the story that you just did is when you're downloading mods, be careful.
Pretty much.
All right.
Next.
I just learned something, right? Like my classes are called mods.
I mean, it's.
Is my ring a mod?
Can be. Anything you apply onto your body that's an extension of yourself can be a modification. Now, that's a whole debate in philosophy in terms of, to what extent, what makes a cyborg.
What about the $6 million man? Do you remember who he was?
Yes.
You're probably too young.
No, I know who that is.
What was his real name?
I have no
Steve
idea.
Austin.
Oh, yeah.
Lee Majors.
Okay.
And so his bionicness, they would be mods.
Yes, most definitely. That would be mod in the more conventional sense. Yes.
Okay, next one.
Do you have a pacemaker, right? Would that then be a mod?
No,
Are you
I
then
don't
a cyborg?
have a pacemaker.
It's a common example used in philosophy, right?
What about? Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Okay, that's okay.
Anyways, next.
I just learned.
Welcome to White
this
Hatter.
boomer just learned something.
Welcome to White Hatter Philosophy Talk.
What's the next one?
What's the meaning of life?
This one, this was all over the place.
This is an interesting one. Again, it's about apps and then them not necessarily doing what you want. So there was a barcode app, and the picture of what it was is there in the corner there. Barcode app lets you scan barcodes, do some cool things with barcodes, QR codes. Apparently, 10 million people downloaded it. There was a software update to the app that apparently had put in like an adware type virus, which pretty much users who had the app, apparently when they were searching things online, it would take them to a different page or using a different browser, generally to serve ads or that kind of thing. So this is an interesting case because it's 10 million people who had downloaded it.
10 million.
Now the app is removed from the Google Play Store already, but if you currently have it on your phone, it still may be on your phone.
And that's one of the issues with the Android store, right? Like because it's open source, it's far easier for malicious malware to get in there, compared to the. I mean, the Apple Store has had
the
some
question
too.
is it malicious? I mean, it's adware, right? So adware itself isn't necessarily designed to destroy your device. It's more so meant to serve you ads and sell data.
It's interesting. Just recently, we had a family connect with us. They live in the Lower Mainland,
right?
And they said they were walking around a neighborhood and they saw the QR codes on poles. And oh, what are those, right?
Yeah.
So they went up there with their phones, put up, and as soon as they boom, porn popped up on their
fantastic. That's why I like in the default app in Apple. If you do scan it using the camera, there'll be a little URL that pops up.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could hide that putting in a URL shortener.
Right.
So there are ways around that. Right. But yes,
we kind of did the same thing. Remember that security conference, the social media conference?
It wasn't. It was a social media conference for marketers.
And what we did.
These people had no experience with security whatsoever.
So what we did was we created these cards with the QR code on them, and we just threw them all over the place, right? And Brandon had set up.
They weren't malicious.
They weren't malicious.
Right? They took it to just a web page going, hey, this could have been malicious.
And yeah, the web page it took them to, they had like skull bones and the kind of thing. And
it wasn't malicious.
And so what Brandon did is he collected the data to see how many people at this social, because they're all supposed to be social media experts, right? How many people would click on it, and there was a ton of them that did, not understanding that by doing that they could have just downloaded a malicious software into their. But it wasn't malicious, but it was pretty funny. But yeah, the family just phoned us, and I said, so notify your municipality, let them know that these are all over your polls, so that they can go in and remove them, right? So
yeah, but at the same time, what's malicious, what's not, in the
I also read a story where a lot of realtors were using this on the realty sites.
Yeah.
So what other realtors were doing was they were printing off their own QR codes and covering the name of the realtor on that and so it would take them to their realty page.
It's the classic story, right? If you want to steal something from a store, you just print off barcodes of a lesser priced product and put it on a product and just go through a store. You haven't heard of that before?
I didn't.
You haven't heard of that?
No.
That's well known.
Really?
Yeah.
That's actually kind of brilliant.
You just have to, the person, the cashier isn't paying attention. Oftentimes they're not.
They're not, because they're just scanning the barcode. Right?
I know, it's like, 5 cents, 5 cents, 5 cents. It's like, okay, there we go. Now to be said, generally the new self-checkouts usually weigh the items too.
Yeah.
To make sure the items weigh the same. But I mean,
well, don't go through a self-checkout. Go through one where use the person.
Okay, we're not advocating for this. This
is for informational purposes
this is all
only.
Public information.
This is for informational
I'm just saying,
purposes
people
only.
have been kind of manipulating barcodes and QR codes since they first came out.
I didn't know that. That's the first time I've
stickers.
heard that, right?
Really?
Like, so if we see somebody I'm going to be on the lookout there now. Like, next time I go to Save On Foods, if I see somebody all of a sudden pulling out like a whole roll of QR codes and sticking them on stuff that I know what they're doing.
Yeah, or before, people just take a QR code from a code from one product, put it on another product. Oh, that's even before printers.
Oh,
right?
wow.
That's
well.
Anyways, okay, Boomer. Surprised you haven't heard that before.
No,
that's old-timey stuff.
No, I knew about the ones with where we did it at the conference, but the telephone pole ones, I knew about that. The realtor ones where realtors were going after doing that one, but that's the first time I heard it like that. So. I'm gonna have to go find a card.
That information has been on the internet for decades.
Informational purposes only.
It's been on the internet for decades. If you get caught, there are serious consequences. Not doing that, legal stuff, all that lovely stuff. Just saying that that stuff has happened. Moving on. Next on the show is hundreds of thousands of Spotify accounts. Credentials were leaked because of credential stuffing.
What the heck is credential stuffing?
Not what you put in a turkey.
That's what I was about to say.
I knew you were going to go there.
Is that what you do to a turkey? Like, what's credential stuffing?
Credential stuffing. Actually, I have a neat little graphic I want to show.
Does it have special effects?
As much as you can in Keynote.
Okay, well, that'll keep me. That'll keep the boomer.
All right. Well, I had our animation time. Here we go. You ready for this? Here we go.
I'm ready, ready.
What is credential? So let's say, for example, you have 4 online accounts.
Okay.
And let's say, hypothetically, the password for each of those accounts is password number 1, which, by the way, is an absolutely terrible password.
So the password is password 1.
This is only for demonstration purposes.
Okay.
For simplicity.
Right.
So let's say someone, for whatever reason, figures out that your password on TikTok was password 1.
Ooh,
either because
look at
you
that
clicked on a link, you put in your password, or you shared it with someone, or it got leaked somehow.
And because we know that most people use the same password.
Precisely. Then what the hackers will do is they will try the exact same password username combination on all possibly known accounts. And if, for example, you have the same password, ta-da! Now all your accounts are compromised because you didn't have a different password.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's called password stuffing.
Credential stuffing.
Credential stuffing.
What are your credentials? So that's what that is. So what happened here? So basically, a bunch of hackers, they wrote a program that tested people's usernames and passwords.
That's on the article you just had up, right? That one right there?
That one, yeah. So they tested the username and passwords, and basically, if they were successful, check mark. Check mark, check mark, check mark. And then
that could take a long time, unless they somehow...
Yeah, but you have a strong enough computer.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So basically, now, this happened twice. So we reported on this previously in 2020 in November, but also February 4th, a security researcher found another database online. Now, back then in February, Spotify told everyone and forced everyone to change their passwords for a security precaution thing. But I mean, sure, you change your password on Spotify if you don't change it on the other accounts.
And so, I mean, we've been saying for years, don't use the same password on all your social media platforms, number 1. So that would help to prevent credential stuffing. And number 2, don't be storing them onto your note apps on your devices because those are easily accessible.
Don't log in on a link someone sends you.
So that's one of the reasons why we've always recommended LastPass.
Yeah, LastPass is a great free option.
And so why is that such a free option? Like, can you walk people through basically what LastPass does?
So it's a password manager app that goes onto your phone. It's free. There are premium options to do some really cool features, like business sharing or family sharing without actually sharing the password. So that's how they make their money, is those premium features. Base level's free, costs you nothing. All the passwords are stored in an encrypted vault, which means someone steals your phone, they can't look at it unless they know the master password, which is usually a super long password. We have a fingerprint ID to unlock it, so it's just a safer place to put your passwords.
Yeah, and we just helped a small business this weekend who had their subject of a phishing attack. Excuse me, and as a result of that, they got username and password, and guess what? They had the same username and password on their other social media platforms, and guess what? They got a hold of that. Once they got in, they changed the username and then moved to two-factor authentication to lock the...
Classic story.
Yeah, classic, right?
Now, this kind of fits nicely into the next story, which is a report from Kaspersky, which is a security research company. They also sell antivirus, and they found in 2019 there was a 34% increase in account takeovers, which is what you just described. Now, in 2020, they found a 54% increase. And, we've been seeing this throughout the last decade, is the most common hack out there occurring is this.
Yeah.
It's not someone who's going to break into your computer code. No. It's someone who's going to figure out your password. They're going to send you a link. You click on the link. You log into your account. They call you up, give them the password. That's the most common hack out there.
And one of the things that I'm finding a lot is that they're really going after the smaller businesses, right? What I like to call the lower hanging fruit. Why? Because they find that a lot of the mid-level to high-level businesses have got proper protocol in order to put in place to prevent
They
something
should.
like this.
Some reports have shown C-level executives aren't following those protocols because they decide not to because they're the executive.
What's a C-level executive?
CEO, CFO,
okay.
Those type of people. Reports have shown that those people generally are
They should be
lax.
called FEOs, field executive officers.
Yeah, there's a
right?
lot of reports showing that they are generally the most insecure because they are in charge and they decide, well, I'm in charge. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, this is exactly what happened to the small businesses that we helped on the weekend, where it was an Instagram account that got compromised. They sent out a phishing attack, which was, the pretext was brilliant. And so the owner took the bait, and as a result of that, provided information that allowed them then to get a password, which then allowed them to check the other social networks that the client had, where she was using the same password, and boof, they got into everything. And then they incorporated they changed them and then incorporated two-factor authentications. Basically said, if you want them, you're gonna have to do this. And so it was classic, right?
Classic. And we're working more with younger students to make them understand how this works. Because if a young person's gonna get hacked, it's not gonna be because someone hacks the code. I mean, it could be if they're downloading mods that are not good mods, as we described in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I have found that a lot of the youth who get their social media platforms taken over is because, number one, they shared their password with somebody else who was a friend who now became a friend of me. In most cases, that's how it goes down. It's rare that it's this. I find this more, not saying it couldn't happen, but I think this is more so for people who are a little bit older, young adults, business owners, and that kind of stuff. Would you agree with that?
Targeted attacks, yes. I don't think someone targets young people for their accounts necessarily. Generally, that's more like I'm going to spam a message out to everyone I can and see what I can get. This is more targeted because this person was posting pictures that could have...
Now, what was interesting about the one I just helped on the weekend too, Brandon, is once the person got into this business's platform, they started sending messages to all their followers.
Yes, that's a classic hacking tactic. It's happened since the beginning of Facebook.
And so why are they sending messages to all their followers now?
Well, because if you receive the message and you follow that person, you know them, you go, oh, I trust you, right? It's why do I need to, it's a form of identity theft in a way, right?
Well, I think what happened as well was they were sending message saying, hey, listen, we're offering a 50% discount on this product. The people were following, 50%, so they'd go to order with it, and so they had a link. They clicked on the link, and they actually created their own page that looked just like. And so now people were entering their credit card numbers and stuff, right? And so they were harvesting it that way as well.
Yes, definitely more targeted, but that's a classic thing we see. That's the most common hack out there.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
Last thing to talk about here today is our...
The OIPC, Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner.
The Canadian, the Provincial Privacy Commissioners and the Commissioner of Canada got together and essentially did a report talking and analyzing Clearview AI.
It's interesting when you look at the ones who participated: Canada, BC, Alberta, and Quebec. Where's Ontario? You would think because they're one of the largest populated provinces in Canada.
I don't know.
Very interesting.
Ontario's privacy. I don't know if they have an Office of Privacy Commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they do, but the ones that are most predominant are the BC.
Yes, Alberta.
And also Nova Scotia has a pretty predominant privacy commissioner. I mean, I guess maybe Ontario is more pro-business.
Yeah,
so maybe that could be why.
There's no doubt. Like the BC offices a lot of people say that a lot of provinces have modeled themselves, like Alberta and the others, off of what's going on here in BC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the whole purpose of this? Clearview AI. That was, now correct me, that's the company that made a lot of controversy because they created programs that used facial recognition because they were screen scraping all faces from all over the internet and then basically putting hardware, software, artificial intelligence into place to identify who these people were, right?
Yes.
And so law enforcement was using it, government was using it, all that kind of crap.
Yeah, and there were reports that...
Were they in Australia? Was this an Australian company?
I don't know where they're based.
Okay.
I think they're based in the U.S.
Okay. So what was the whole thing of this report?
So the whole report was, there were reports of that they were selling their services to organizations here in Canada.
Yeah, law enforcement.
Yes. And basically, in most provinces here in Canada have privacy laws that say just because you have information online doesn't mean someone has the right to analyze it, to record it, to copy it, and whatnot.
Which is interesting, right?
Which is interesting.
I think you're going to talk more about
because
that.
I guess Clearview is not a Canadian company,
No.
and many places around the world, if something's on the internet publicly available, that's free reign for anyone to use and analyze and do what they want with. Now, that is their stance, which there's arguments on that as well. So the report found that, you know, what they were doing, they weren't getting consent from every Canadian to collect their data, and basically because of that, we recommend that you stop what you're doing. Now, when the investigation started, Clearview pulled themselves from the Canadian market.
Go figure.
And they said, you know,
probably to try and stop the investigation.
No need to report and to go through the investigation because guess what? You see, we're not even in your market.
Yeah.
But they still did the report, they still did the investigation, and their conclusions were basically, number one, you can't, we recommend you don't operate in Canada. If you do, we'll be making issues. And then number two, any data you have of Canadians in your system, in your servers, delete.
Okay.
That's an interesting, and Clearview said in a response going, we will do our best to remove data for Canadians that we identify.
Yeah, whatever.
Which, I mean, how in the world, unless someone's waving a Canadian flag on the internet,
but
how do you know?
A couple questions for you. If I'm a company and I buy Clearview, how the hell are you going to know that I'm using it? You don't.
Yeah, I mean, true. So you never. I mean, definitely, if you do, there's if you get found out.
Right.
But I mean, there's ways to hide your tracks online.
But number two, if you take the argument that the privacy commissioners made, because we're privacy hawks here, right?
Yes, we are.
We're privacy hawks. But if you take their argument, would that not apply to Facebook, Google, all these other major platforms?
That's my issue. So I love privacy. I love privacy law and it helps protect people's privacy. But the issue that I have is when privacy laws state that if your information's out there publicly, it doesn't mean someone has the right to look at it, to analyze it, to review it. Now, it's more nuanced than that, but that's the gist of it. There's other exceptions to that rule as well. But here's the issue, right? It also states in the privacy law, if you self-publish something, that can be reviewed, analyzed, and, you know, if I write a book, right, and, well, obviously, you are allowed to read it and look at it and review it and analyze and write a critique on it. Right? So the argument that I have is, okay, if I self-publish a blog, and I post a picture of not traveling, because...
Of yourself.
Of myself, right? Of the studio. My face is in the picture, right?
Okay,
screenshot.
Right, so Brandon just screenshotted it, right?
Thumbnail.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So if I self-publish that, I have agreed, and privacy law states that, that's out there to be reviewed and analyzed. So if I make a social media post or picture, how is that not self-publishing? Now, what's interesting about the Clearview is they're no longer in the Canadian market, so they're not going to take this to court. Right? Because if they were in the Canadian market, they would take it to court. Now, I wish they would have gone to court, because here's my argument. Basically, Google archives web pages, Google's caches web pages. So if I write a blog and it's my face is on the picture, Google will likely have a cache copy version of that.
Facebook does it, Instagram does it, TikTok does it.
How is that not the same thing? Right? So basically, if these are, I'm not trying to like point fingers at the privacy commissioners. They do great jobs, but the issue I have is they should now go after Google, Bing, Amazon, because they
Facebook,
are
Instagram,
caching,
Snapchat.
They have copies of people's pictures in their system, in a cache, in an archive. Archive.org, the webpage that...
the Wayback Machine.
That takes copies of web pages throughout the years, right? If I have a personal web page...
it's captured.
It's captured. They have a copy of that.
And in
Are
fact,
they next?
Well, what about YouTube? Because they take
they
thumbnails,
do.
right?
They do.
Thumbnails, right?
Yes.
Like it's very interesting, right?
So, unfortunately, I mean, again, I'm not totally, I don't like the idea Clearview is a company that what they do is what they do, but if a picture's out there publicly, it's out there publicly. And a lot of people have that mentality and thought, as many places around the world do, but many countries are kind of honing back that idea. But now the question is competition, right? Where, okay, maybe as North Americans, you know, companies here cannot analyze and siphon our data publicly on the internet.
Right.
What about Asia? What about Russia? What about South America, right? What about companies there who aren't bound by Canadian law? So
do they have an advantage now?
Now, do they have an advantage? Because that's the challenge.
I mean, that's what's interesting about the internet knows no boundaries, right? Like, it doesn't recognize an international boundary.
Precisely.
And so who owns the internet? Well, nobody does, right? I mean, it's everybody's. But it's interesting. I mean, we are privacy hawks here, right? Like,
Yes.
we really are. But this kind of reminds me of bad case law, right? In policing, it obviously, a lot. I don't want to say a lot, but there are some people in policing that believe, well, if the courts haven't ruled on it, we can do it until such time as they do. And that's how bad case law comes about,
Yeah.
right? Because you do something that pushes the limits, and then the courts get involved and say, you shouldn't have done that. Here's the new case law. Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of like companies doing stuff, right? And
Yeah. So what's interesting about privacy commissioners is just because they have this report, they have these suggestions and conclusions, it
doesn't make it enforceable.
it doesn't necessarily make it enforceable because you as a company can still go through and do it, and if they enforce
But
it,
then they'll take it to the court.
yeah, and then or you take it to the court. It'll go to the court eventually. Now, I would have loved this case to go to the court because it's been a perfect example to let us know. Because that means Google couldn't operate how it does in Canada,
Right.
Bing couldn't, Amazon couldn't, which is a fundamental part of the internet.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe we suggest they investigate those companies.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Because, who knows, maybe SM Whitehair could bring down the internet.
I mean, that's what the whole GDPR is all about in Europe right now, is kind of looking at all these types of issues.
I'm not too familiar with that, as I should be, but I don't know where its stance is on publicly available information.
Right. I mean, it's not that Clearview was collecting stuff that wasn't publicly available,
Yeah,
right?
for example, like you have a social media page, right?
Yes.
You may have a private Instagram page,
Yes.
right? But your picture and name you pick is still public.
Public.
So what their system was doing is, going through
Scraping it.
Yeah, here's a picture, here's your name, deal the
And then they were using AI to kind of marry the two together.
Yeah, so essentially, if you're on the street, you took a picture of someone, and you plopped into their system, it will review their database and tell you who they were based on the information that was available online.
I mean, there's some platforms out there. I mean, TinEye,
True.
Google Image, Yandex Image, right, where they can do the reverse image searching now. And the Russian one, Yandex, it's getting pretty. I mean, it's like holy crow,
So
right?
again, my question is, what makes those different compared to, I guess, Clearview, because they hit the media headlines, right? So I mean, I would have loved this to go to court.
It's going to be interesting, right? Because with all this facial recognition AI technology, I think it's going to be harder for people to who are looking to get into enforcement or into Secret Service, who want to do undercover work, right?
Yes.
Because of all of a sudden, we already know that bad guys, one of the things that they like to do is take a picture of somebody and then do reverse images, searches.
Yes.
Sure, you're Darren Lawler. No, you're actually Stephen Smith, and you're a cop.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I mean, some cities, and we've seen that already in the U.S., that are banning facial recognition software from being used.
Yeah, because they had a number of false positives, right?
Precisely. So
People were being arrested on a warrant when in fact it wasn't them.
yeah.
Right?
So maybe
Interesting.
it's more particular on facial recognition, perhaps, where this needs to go down. But again, the issue I have with general Canadian privacy law is, if information is out there, publicly accessible, then that's the issue. And
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, being open source investigators like we are, it's far easier to do research on somebody from the States than it is from here in Canada, right?
Well, I mean, if again, when it comes to BC and Canadian privacy law, if you're doing a legitimate investigation, there's an exception, right? There's certain exceptions to privacy law given certain situations, like doing an investigation, reasonable grounds, that kind of thing. Yeah, then you can collect someone's data in order to facilitate that job. So, but just blanket data collection, generally here in Canada is a no-no.
It's a no-no.
But Google does it, Amazon does it, Bing does it, Microsoft. So I would like to see a balance in the investigations.
Application, yeah, for sure.
To investigate those organizations as well,
Yeah.
because what makes them different, and if so, do they have to change? And if they do change, how does that impact Canada's competition and access to the internet
Competitiveness,
to the rest of the world?
Yeah, good point.
So these are questions.
Interesting show. My big takeaway: my glasses are mods.
The candy, yes.
My glasses are mods. Good show. Interesting show today. Interesting show for sure, especially the QR code kind of thing. People are doing QR codes. So, anyways, on behalf of myself, I'm Darren.
And Brian, thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, spread the message about our channel and make sure you subscribe.
I think we're only, since recording, it's only a couple away.
Yeah, I think we're under 300 now, making
1,000?
1,000.
Yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We want to put the K beside it. right?
The K's nice.
The K's
Yeah.
nice. The K's nice. So
All
on behalf
right.
of myself,
And
see ya.
Brandon, thank you
Bye.
all so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.